Think about a medical school. It's supposed to be a place of healing, right? Where the next generation learns how to save lives. But what happens when those very institutions become a source of profound trauma and, yes, even violence? Today, we're digging into a really tough but critical topic. What is actually going on inside India's medical schools?
Okay, just look at this number. It is absolutely staggering. Medical students are a tiny fraction of the total student population in India, just over 1%. And yet, they count for almost half of all deaths from ragging. I mean, how is that even possible? It's a huge flashing red light that something is deeply, deeply wrong.
So that brings us to the central question we really need to answer here. How did the very places designed to train our future doctors become the absolute epicenter of this campus violence crisis? We're going to break down the data, the personal stories, and the systemic failures to try and figure that out.
So let's move beyond that shocking statistic for a moment and talk about the real human cost. Because behind every single one of those percentage points is a person, a family, and a future that was tragically cut short.
So what exactly do we mean when we say ragging? Let's be really clear. This isn't about some harmless college prank. The official definition covers everything from rudeness all the way to acts that cause serious physical and psychological harm. This is about coercion and abuse. Plain and simple.
And this is not some abstract concept. Look at what happened to Anil Mathania. He was just 18 years old. In November 2024, he was called into a so-called introduction session by 15 seniors. It went on for over 3 hours. He was forced to stand, sing, dance. The physical and mental trauma was so severe that by midnight, his heart literally gave out. He died from cardiac arrest before he ever really got the chance to become a doctor.
So how do institutions sometimes react to these things? Well, in a totally different case from December 2025, a junior was forced to kneel for hours. And this was the initial public statement from the college dean. He tried to frame it as just a fight.
But that's not where the story ends. After the victim's father went and filed a formal complaint, the college completely changed its tune and ended up suspending 6 senior students for ragging. This just highlights a pattern you see again and again, that gap between the initial denial from the institution and the grim reality of what's actually happening.
You know, these terrible stories, they don't just happen in a vacuum. They are symptoms of a much bigger systemic failure. So you have to ask yourself, how is this kind of violence allowed to continue year after year?
And make no mistake, this isn't an isolated problem. Across all of higher education in India, the trend is going in the absolute wrong direction. The number of deaths related to ragging is climbing, from 14 deaths in 2022 to 20 in 2024. The problem is getting worse, not better.
Now here's the truly wild part. It's not like there are no rules. The National Medical Commission, which is the main regulatory body for medical education, has an official zero-tolerance policy. They have very specific regulations designed to stop ragging before it starts.
And yet, in February 2025, 18 medical colleges were flagged for not even complying with the most basic anti-ragging measures. And look at this list. It includes some of the most well-known institutions in the country. This just reveals this massive, massive disconnect between the policy on paper and the reality on campus.
See, on paper, it all looks pretty good. There are supposed to be committees and squads and all sorts of protections. But in practice, well, India's own Supreme Court has said that these regulations remain largely on paper. Even the National Helpline has been called nothing more than a referral call center. The very system that's supposed to protect students is failing them.
Okay, so if the system is failing, then we have to ask why this behavior keeps happening. What is going on inside the mind of a student who does this kind of thing to another person? Let's try to understand the psychology behind it.
A survey from the NMC itself actually gives us a huge clue. Just think about this for a second. Over a quarter of postgraduate medical students say they themselves have been ragged, and nearly a third say they've experienced abuse directly from faculty or senior staff. What this shows is a toxic, top-down culture of aggression that creates this awful cycle where today's victims very often become tomorrow's perpetrators.
So what's really driving this? Well, when you dig into it, it boils down to a few pretty ugly things. It's about power, establishing dominance. It's about stress, taking out the immense pressure of medical school on people below you. And then there's this really twisted logic, this cycle of revenge. I suffered through this, so now it's your turn. And over time, that cycle just destroys empathy, the one quality a doctor needs most.
You'll often hear people try to justify this stuff. They'll call it a tradition or a way to socialize new students, but let's be absolutely clear, that is a myth. The National Medical Commission, they don't mince words at all. They describe it as a manifestation of psychopathic behavior. Okay, so this is all pretty dark, I know, but there is a real push for change. So let's shift gears and talk about the new rules and resources that are being put in place to fight back and to empower students.
There's a new bill from the NMC that's trying to give these regulations some actual teeth. We're talking about giving squads the power to do surprise raids in hostels. We're talking about holding colleges financially responsible. They could lose recognition or face huge fines for not reporting incidents. It also mandates CCTV in hotspots. And, maybe most importantly, it establishes a student's legal right to a safe learning environment.
So while we wait for the system to get better, there are practical things that students and their parents need to know right now. First, stay in groups. Trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is. Walk away. Tell a warden or a faculty member immediately. And use the official channels. Silence is what allows this culture to continue.
And this right here, this might be the most important slide we show you. This is the national, toll-free, 24/7 anti-ragging helpline and the website. Please, take a screenshot, write this number down, and share it. Using these resources is one of the most powerful things you can do to get help and trigger action.
So, new regulations are definitely a step in the right direction. But we all know that real change, true safety, it's about more than just rules on paper. It's about fundamentally changing the culture on every single campus into one of genuine respect. Which leaves us with one final and really crucial question. Laws can punish people, and that's absolutely necessary. But how do we make that deeper shift? How do we build a campus culture where mentorship replaces intimidation? Where empathy isn't just a word, but the very first and most important lesson that our future healers learn? That is the real challenge that lies ahead.